past, a lot of people have said many times, I've heard it, Los Angeles is a city without history. And I would disagree.
When we think of legacy, we think about people and places. Historical sites and landmarks inform the personality and essence of a city. Project Restore LA is a non-for-profit whose mission is to restore and preserve the civic integrity of Los Angeles. With us today is Kevin Ju, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Project Restore LA. Thank you so much for being here, Kevin.
It's my pleasure, Natalia.
So tell us a little bit about the organization, how it started, and what's your role in it?
Sure. So Project Restore is a nonprofit, and it is dedicated to the restoration and preservation of historic city-owned buildings.
Can you pick one project that is your favorite?
I have a few, but City Hall, of course, has to be at the top, only because it is the largest project I had ever been involved with. It was the most complex project. It's used by the most people. It's visited by the most people, and the quality of the materials and the workmanship are just incredible. And so it was an honor to work there. And honestly, I do believe it is the best looking building on the city skyline. And I tell everyone, that asks me about City Hall, you could not build that building today.
How so?
Well, number one, the cost. There is so much marble, limestone, granite, bronze, and decorative paint in that building. You could not afford to build that building today. The second thing is a lot of the marble that's used in that building is no longer available. It's no longer quarried.
Wow,
So,
that's fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite part about the job?
Every project is so different and interesting. It's, you're constantly learning things, and I really like that. Plus I'm very sort of mechanical in nature. I like to fix things, like to take things apart, so it sort of appeals to that.
I love that. And what's the thing you're most proud of? Again, is there one thing that you can choose?
Yeah, the one thing I'm most proud, it would have to be the Hollyhock House project, only because to myself, that's probably the most significant structure that I've been able to work on. And it's because, number one, it's a Frank Lloyd Wright structure, so not a lot of people get to work on those. Number two, it's a World Heritage Site, so even less people get to work on those, And a lot of people don't know about this the Barnsdall Park site, that when it was being constructed by Frank Lloyd Wright, he actually brought onto the job his son, Lloyd Wright. He brought Rudolph Schindler and Richard Neutra. They were all working for him on this site. All four men actually ended up staying in Los Angeles just because of this one job that brought them out here. They stayed in Los Angeles, they established practices, and they pretty much became sort of the fathers of modern architecture in the state.
Wow.
And then in 2019, the Hollyhock House was actually inscribed by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. And so that's, very special for the city. It's the first and only World Heritage Site in the city.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's the third World Heritage Site in the whole state of California, but it's the first and only site that's a World Heritage status that was man-made, because the other two sites are Yosemite and the Redwoods.
So it's got the same status as Yosemite.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I was wondering, once these structures are completed, who decides what to do with them, what they're used for?
It's actually as I said, we only work on city-owned structures, so it's actually the end user, the stakeholder, usually the department. So for that project, we teamed with the Bureau of Engineering, General Services, Cultural Affairs was the curator, and Recreation and Parks for the landscaping. And so it's Cultural Affairs operates all the programs within Barnsdall Park. And so they're the ones that make the decision on the use of, Hollyhock House as well as Residence A.
That's a very interesting project, the Residence A in Barnsdall Park. When did that begin, and how involved have you been in the whole process of restoring it?
Sure. That project actually started in 2018. Councilmember Mitchell Farrell, his office asked us to become involved with that project after, on the heels of restoring the Frank Lloyd Wright Hollyhock House. And his office actually secured the startup funding so we can start the retrofit and restoration of that structure. And since then, we've been able to assemble more funding through the city budget process, and we've also gotten a grant from the National Park Service under their Save America's Treasures program. And so we've been there since, like I said, 2018. It's a full seismic retrofit because that building, it's been vacant actually since 2000. And there was a lot of water damage, due to the flat roofs of Frank Lloyd Wright, and the earthquake itself, had caused a lot of damage. And so the project right now is about actually 70% complete, and we hope to be finished by the middle to the end of 2022.
You were saying it's really interesting that sometimes what makes a building historic is not its architecture necessarily, but what happened there, who was there, and what they did. Can you tell us an example?
Sure. When I was doing project management for the Community Development Department prior to coming to Project Restore, I was working on the expansion of a library, and I believe it was the Jefferson Branch Library. And, it's not architecturally significant, it's just basically a rectangular box. And when we were starting the project through our investigation, we found out that the first African American book club was actually started in that library by a woman named Vassie Wright. And so we ended up, doing the expansion and then renaming the library the Jefferson Vassie Wright Library.
I was wondering about reaching to the younger generations. Why do you think it's important for the younger generations to value the restoration process that you're in charge of?
Well, for myself, I'm like a big believer in history, in knowing it and understanding it, because that way, you don't make the same mistakes that others have made in the past. You need to learn from those. A second thing is, to me, is sort of like sustainability, because when you think about it, there's no building that's as sustainable as the one you already have. And so if a person, wants to learn and appreciate it, there are lots of books, there's actually lots of organizations. There's over 200 organizations just like Project Restore that are involved in historic restoration and preservation in the Southern California area. There's many books and magazines written on the history as well as architecture of Los Angeles. I mean, Angel City Press, they have over 75 books just on Los Angeles history and architecture alone.
Wow.
So there's lots of places people can go to. There's the library. Central Library has a huge collection. There's lots of places people can go to learn more about architecture history and, then maybe appreciate a little more.
So how can people get involved? I know it is an organization that is publicly and privately funded. So how can our viewers get in touch or collaborate with Project Restore LA?
Sure. On our website, it is projectrestorela.org. You can go there, and we have a donate button. We also have a Facebook page at Project Restore LA, and you can donate through there. And really, to support a lot of these historic structures and historic venues, I would say once the pandemic is over, by all means, visit a historic site.
This is fascinating. I would talk with you for hours, but I guess we have to say goodbye. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being here talking about Project Restore LA.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Natalia. It was my pleasure again.